Okay, so Metallica, Master of Puppets, this comes out in 1986. Why does this album mean so much to you?
Just that was a huge like heavy metal cultural shift, for myself and like all my buddies. And I was starting to really get it, the inkling that I was going to play guitar, and I was already begging my mom, like we were talking about earlier, about getting a guitar. So hearing this album, hearing it through and through for the first time, it's just like it was just heavier, sound and faster and meaner, and a crazy aggressive vocal. That's the thing that drew me to it. I think the most James Hetfield's vocal was just just here in your face, so and yeah, just the way that it's recorded, the guitar sounds is great, just like Marshalls on absolute full blast, double tracked kind of thing. And just in that writing style, like it had a real mystique to it, and that's the common theme with all this stuff in the 80s that I kind of miss nowadays. Is just, it was true mystique, not to the band themselves, but to the writing and how the chord work and the melodies, all melted together. Right. I don't know if that's just because I was young and impressionable and hearing this stuff for the first time, but there was a magic back then that I don't find out of new bands this day and age. Right. But yeah, another thing I really liked about them too, they, and not just the album itself, but the imagery of them were so simple. They looked like us. It was Nike high tops, ripped jeans, just a leather jacket, and a Misfits t-shirt, and that's it. And they go up on stage. It was like, hey, it just brought it more home and brought it more street back in, but they were heavier and meaner, than all these other bands I was listening to. I'm like, this is such a huge shift, it intensified things, but it simplified things at the same time. And that's why that was such a shift for me listening to it, and just Metallica in general, not just that record, but then going to the back catalog and hearing Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, and saying, what a neat band, right? These guys are really changing things up.
So officially, there is only one single, just Master of Puppets, but it does have two other songs that most people know. So there's a Battery and Welcome Home Sanitarium. So I'd say those three songs are pretty well known to the general public, despite just Master of Puppets being the single.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Battery, it's just like, how intense, more intense can you get than Battery, right? Even just in the name itself, right? As being battered or whatever. But yeah, it's a crazy good song. And that's the thing, is I remember the next year, basically after that record came out, and getting a guitar, just like trying to play that stuff, and it was just like, so the picking and all down picking, it was so fast and it was so hard to do, right? And I love that tune. And that's the thing in Sanitarium, what a great tune. Going back to that whole mystique, is a bit of a story, but someone trying to break free and being caught within themselves. And it's going to see a theme here, because it's like, yeah, with the stuff that I like, because I love that stuff when people talk, put in lyric form, going inwards instead of just talking about something, that they're witnessing. They're talking about things within themselves. Those are always the more powerful, more emotional songs that can connect to people. And I love that vibe. And that's the thing. A song like Welcome Sanitarium has that. What a great tune. And there's the thing with the going back to guitar and all that too, is Sanitarium, kind of a cool, easier song to learn. So that's kind of what drew me in as well, because I was starting to learn guitar, and that was an easy one to learn. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can play Welcome Home Sanitarium, right? And I learned it pretty easily and just got super excited about it, right?
So the album came out, and instantly it had widespread critical acclaim for the music, for the political lyrics. It's regarded as one of the greatest and most influential metal albums of all time. Essentially, anytime you see a list of the best metal albums of all time, it's in the top three, like always. It's like there wouldn't be the mainstream genre since then without this album.
Yeah, there's no way it can't be in the top three or top five. Like, it's number one for a lot of people, right? Because it's not only just like, just how good those songs were, and how aggressive that the band was, and it's just, this is that big shift, it's just, it opened the door for basically, that kind of more thrashy metal sound, that which evolved into many different genres of metal. Like as much of what Black Sabbath did, like basically inventing heavy metal, like, you know, you can't help but say Metallica was that next band for that secondary, more like even just as important cultural shift in metal was that album. Like, you know, and just Metallica in general, but that album is really, you know, that big one that made, you know, people really notice that there was a different direction in heavy metal happening, and a lot of bands went that route.
And despite it having virtually no airplay, no radio play, no music videos, it sells 500,000 copies in its first year. It becomes the first thrash metal album to go platinum, to sell 1 million copies. And since then, it's gone on to sell over 10 million copies. So this was like a changing of the guard when it came out.
Absolutely, it was. It was just everything changed. You know, got to think of that time. It was all, you know, heavy metal was basically the LA glam, like, you know, scene, and you know, earlier like 70s, late 70s, early 80s, like a British invasion of metal. You know, Silk Design, you know, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, still going, all those bands, right? You know, they were that one big shift that basically right up in between the middle between those two genres. Metallica just bulldozed right through, right, and really changed things up. It was very refreshing and fun. You know, changed my guitar playing. It's like it went from just kind of riffy, high riffy and lead guitar to like the lower string metal, double picking, you know, and doing all that stuff, right? And yeah, it really changed things up a lot.
So one thing that I discovered about this album that's shocking, you know, I think, you know, as a Metallica fan, I think I know most of the history. Apparently, Lars was in talk with Geddy Lee from Rush to produce the album. And if the schedules align between Metallica and Rush, Geddy Lee would have produced that album.
That's hilarious. I've never heard.
Isn't that the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard?
That is kind of crazy. That's right from Lars. It's not just like a rumor or something like that. It's right from Lars. Yeah,
it's from Lars, is what I can see, and that I guess some of the influence is this album. Metallica started to go a little more prog, like a little more Rush influence, if that makes any sense. So,
oh, it definitely did. Right. You know, you can hear it in the riffing and stuff, and just like there's some weird little timing turnarounds and stuff where Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning is the 4 on the floor, kind of just, you know, pedal to the metal kind of thing. That one was, you know, tempo changes, you know, a little bit like weird dynamic changes and stuff. You could see they were starting to branch it, because that's the thing. They were just becoming better musicians at that point, I think, because they were just finally doing it professional for a number of years. You know, because the first 2 records are just trying their best to, you know, to break the market and all that stuff. And then they're, you know, going like, you know, Master of Puppets and stuff, or, you know, at the end of, you know, Ride the Lightning, touring constantly and becoming better musicians. Right. So that's nuts to hear. I've never heard that.
We'll have to verify that. I saw that, but it's, you know, you never know what's fake news, but if that's true, that's like some crazy history there.
How interesting would that have been, you know, with the writing that they were doing, but, you know, where Geddy would have pushed them. Very interesting.
Yeah. So the album was a high point for Metallica, but it was also a low point. This is the last album with the bass player Cliff Burton, right? There was the tragic bus accident, and that shifted into, you know, they have Jason Newsted after that for a few albums, and then eventually they have Robert Trujillo. I have a quote here from bassist Robert Trujillo, who's been Metallica's bass player since after Some Kind of Monster, I believe. And this is what he says. So he cites Master of Puppets as his actual favorite album from the band. He says, "I feel Master of Puppets has a lot of everything. It's got instrumentals. It's got great songs, great riffs. It's got one of my favorite songs ever by Metallica, and that's Disposable Heroes. So anytime I hear that particular song, count me in. Battery is an amazing song. So it's just got everything that I love about Metallica." So you get an approval from Metallica's current bass player.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's a great record. Yeah, but Disposable Heroes, what a tune. Just like that, the double bass kick, you know, that's the thing that kind of made me and my buddies go crazy. Just that guitar, like, you know, going in that the double kick, just slamming, right? You know, it's kind of funny because it's like I think Lars struggles with it a little bit these days live, but they try to do it right because they know it's a fan favorite. So yeah, don't blame him for that being his favorite Metallica album, because there's no denying how important that record was for sure. And that all the instrumental stuff, and all the interludes and stuff. Like James Hetfield is one of the best, interlude writers. Like it's, for breakdowns and shifting songs and basically from, just connecting parts together. It's just brilliant.
And we keep seeing how Ozzy is showing up in every story here, right? Because it's like the godfather of heavy metal. And where did Robert Trujillo come from? He was Ozzy's bass player before Metallica.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there you go. Right, and Ozzy's if we're talking about heavy metal in general, Ozzy's always going to sneak in there somewhere. And I think too, it's Metallica. One of their bigger breaks for touring is the Ultimate Sin tour for Ozzy, and it was the album cycle for Master of Puppets, and Metallica was opening. I think it was the US tour. I don't know if it was overseas too, but they had a good long chunk of time on the road with Ozzy, right? So that would have been a crazy tour too, because Ozzy was still being nuts, and the band was, Metallica, getting this newfound fame and partying. It must have been a crazy tour too. Not as crazy as the Motley Crue tour, I'm sure, with Ozzy, but definitely another crazy tour.
There are levels to crazy.
Yeah, many.
were you in the loop at all with Metallica's song Master of Puppets being in Stranger Things in the season 4 finale?
It just came up, right? Because you'd see all these little, I don't follow TikTok or anything like that, but that leaks into like Instagram, like little TikTok videos and stuff. And it was just, why am I seeing like pictures or videos of
some guy playing it?
Yeah, it's like why is Master of Puppets everywhere, right? And my daughter was playing guitar one night, and she came in. She's like, "Do you know Master of Puppets?" Right? And I'm,
you're like kind of proud and like kind of, yeah.
So she's like, "Oh wow, you do." And I was like, "I've learned that 30 years ago, yeah, or more, 35, I think now." But yeah, it's funny. It's a resurgence with a whole new demographic and the kids, right? And to maybe a lot of kids that wouldn't listen to Metallica, maybe, right? Because it's just, who knows? But yeah, crazy.
It's funny. Sometimes there's promotion that you just can't buy, like things that just naturally go viral. And Stranger Things is like one of the biggest shows of all time. Like the numbers on Netflix are like astronomical. And I had enough people that were telling me I need to watch it. So I went from the start and watched all 4 seasons. And first season's amazing. Second and third are okay. And then they nail fourth season is awesome. And it's the finale of the 4th season, which is like a great season. It's at its peak of popularity, and it's like the final moments, like the biggest moments of the show. And the main character is playing Master of Puppets, and apparently the actual actor learned the song on guitar to do it properly. And there's videos of like Metallica loves this. Like the song has charted as a legit hit that it never was back in the day when it was underground. So it's like renewed sales, renewed airplay. And there's videos of Metallica with that actor. Like they had him come out to their concerts, and I don't know if he's gone on stage to play with them, but he plays it backstage with them, and they're like, holy shit, he actually knows how to play it.
That's cool. Yeah, what a resurgence, for a tune like that. Like I said, it reached millions more people that probably would have never even though they're still a gigantic, band, and but that definitely was a nice little push for them. I'm sure they're loving the royalties on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, not that they need any more money at this point. I think they're all worth like 200 million or 300 million or something ridiculous, but it's nice to more paychecks. We'll take them. So I saw Metallica in Ottawa, I don't know, 15 years ago. So Godsmack was opening for Metallica. Then maybe 7 years ago, I saw them in Toronto at the Rogers Centre. And I have tickets, I mentioned, in August for their 2 nights where they play 2 different sets. They got Pantera opening one night. They have Five Finger Death Punch opening the next night. What's your experience seeing Metallica over the years?
First time I saw Metallica, it was a big double tour. Might be a good little segue here too. It was 1992 or 3. It was Guns N' Roses and Metallica double headliner with Faith No More opening, and it was at the C&E grandstand. But it wasn't a grandstand; it was a whole C&E stadium, right? So Yeah, super cool, right? You know, which is it was a unique concert too, because if you remember this, James Hetfield a couple months before had they were playing in Montreal, and they had a pyro mishap and burnt his arm and some of his face a little bit, and so the original concert was canceled. We were bummed because we heard about it on the day. They were supposed to be the day after Montreal, so we're a little bummed. A couple months later, they come back more near the end of the summer. And so they had a replacement guitar player. I forget his name, but he was in a band called Metal Church. They did a phenomenal job too. But it was interesting to see James Hetfield just with a microphone. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I feel like I'm missing something, but this is kind of history.
It's also something you're never going to see again. I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Yeah. So it was, yeah. So Metallica was the only time they were ever 5-piece, I guess. And I think they actually were the onset where James was just singing for a bit. You know, I might be mistaken on that, but yeah, it was even though we were bummed, I still in the back of my mind knew it was something. You know, even though it was out of a really bad accident and really shitty thing, it was something kind of special, right? You know, and different. So yeah, it was great seeing them, and then just to be followed up by Guns N' Roses. And if you remember at that time, like they were just. Guns N' Roses was ruling the world at that point, right? It was just insanity, you know. So yeah, and I've seen Metallica a couple times after that. I guess most recently was the Hardwired to Self-Destruct tour, you know, which was great. That was at I'm going to still call it Skydome. It's Rogers Center.
Old habits die hard. It's the Skydome forever.
I don't just like even the Scotiabank still ACC to me, right? But yeah, that was a great concert. That one blew me away because the production was pretty intense. And the thing is, it's probably the first time you see Metallica where I've been, you know, after years of touring and knowing production and rigging and because I hadn't seen them for a long time because I didn't go to any of the concerts. I think I've only seen Metallica, I think 2 or 3. Yeah, I think it was only the third time I've seen Metallica. So seeing him on that Hardwired tour at the Rogers Center, it blew me away. It was more sonically, you know, because they developed this subsystem, and I read about it a bit after where, you know, they were using it for, you know, just the instrumentation and stuff. But when they were doing those concussive, like, you know, like bomb drops and like, you know, those audio cues where they had a sub-array system and they would fire them in succession, you know, to add like a waveform, adding like a millisecond later to when that's next sub would fire that sound, then the next one, the next one, the next one. So by the time it got out to the audience, especially the people at the back, it was basically felt like a mild EMP. So I'm sitting there in my seat with my good buddy Chad, and, you know, they're doing it's the intro for the song One. So, and then, you know, so all the, you know, all the narration and all the, you know, the helicopter and all the rifle, you know, sounds and stuff. And so we know what's coming. And there's big, you know, flash pot coming down to the stage and it explodes. And they had it timed with this concussive sub drop, and it hit me. It was seriously like a right through me. I look at my buddy. I'm like, what the, you know, I'm like, I will be reading about what this PA is tomorrow, what they did to the subs to make this happen. Me being an audio nerd. Yeah. So,
man, they're using like acoustics and science and physics, and
it was basically a new, like I got to get refreshed on it to know the exact science of it, but it's just that it's time aligned subs, right? So they have a sound that is basically just all sub oriented. So it's within, it's within 20 hertz up to 50 hertz, right? And it's compressed, and it's just designated into that frequency, you know, space, and just, you know, a whole array of subs fire, you know, then the next ones and the next ones and the next ones until it builds, right? You know, and then like I said, by the time it gets out to us, it's an actual wave, like, but at a very, very strong level hitting you, right? So it's not just, you know, when you go to concert and you feel that kick drum, it was something more than that. It was air actually moving you, and it was really impressive. I'll always remember that, you know, and I want to get it. I need it. I got to work for it.
We need it.
I need it for lives, and just a button, a big red button at front of house. Be like, okay, pow.
Yeah, you'll need the little glass case over top of the red button just to be safe. Yeah, with what is it with much power comes much responsibility or something. I can see you at like a JJ Wild concert just with this button. Like,
it worked for JJ or not, but you know, it's maybe, you never know. It might be a little spot for it, you know.
So I have three more things about this album. This is really cool. In 2015, Master of Puppets became the first metal recording to be selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So the first ever metal album that they store for the future.
Yeah, it just goes back to what we were talking about. It was a huge cultural shift, you know, that spawned as much as Black Sabbath was important to, you know, the birth of heavy metal. So were they. It's just down the line a little bit in a little bit of a different direction, you know, huge.
So a few accolades. So it was ranked number 97 on the list of Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time. Second on the list, second on Rolling Stone's list for 100 greatest metal albums of all time. I think number one is Black Sabbath because it's the start of that genre. And then Time included the album in its list of 100 best albums of all time. So it's an all-time great. Everybody knows it. Critics, fans. And anything else you have to say about this album before we move on to the next one?
It's just funny because with this reviews that you're talking about and just what, you know, what these albums have gone on to, it's just like, it's like shooting fish in a barrel on my choices, right? It's like, I'm picking all the easy ones, but it's just not like, it's just what changed my trajectory on everything. And it just goes to show why, you know, with what you're reading back, it's just huge albums, man.
Yeah, you've chosen like undeniably great albums. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm sure, I mean, we have a lot of listeners that maybe listen to country that are going to get into these for the first time, or we have a 14-year-old listening that doesn't know that these are the great albums that came before the great albums that are out now. So we're turning on a whole new generation here.
I'm basically in this thing covering, like, if you want to listen, like get a little schooling on 80s heavy metal right up to the 90s and that shift of what metal did, basically this is what this is. And that
this is the school of metal here for everybody.